Well, let's get started. There'll probably be some more people coming in. So welcome. Thanks for joining me on this Friday afternoon. Hopefully the weather is nice where you are. We're in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a little chilly today, but we had 80s this week, so it was actually pretty warm. So let's get started with our webinar. Okay, so let's go over what we'll cover. Just quickly, we're going to go through meetings versus webinars in Zoom, equipment setup and the internet connection. Hopefully our internet connection goes well. Lighting and backgrounds, co-hosts in Zoom, polling and other options for Q&A, teaching and interactivity, activities to help keep the students engaged, and additional resources. So let's start with an activity, because one of the things is I believe in connection before content, and that I'm sure you've heard that already, but it's harder to make a connection virtually than it is in person, right? So one of the things is to make sure your kids feel connected, that they feel like they can open up. It's a safe place for them to share. So one of the things that we use in our camp is called the name game. So the name game is a game that you can play virtually. It's, of course, more fun in real life. But the way we play it in our classroom is we have a circle of kids, and you may have played this already. And they have to say their first name and then an adjective and motion that describes them starting with the first letter of their first name. So for instance, I might say jumping Julie, and then I jump up and down, and then that way the next person might be boastful Brian, and so he has to do jumping Julie and boastful Brian, and then it goes on and on and on. So the way you could do this virtually is you could do it either in the chat, so especially if you have a webinar, but more fun way would be in a gallery view in a meeting. And so we're going to talk about a little bit the difference between a meeting and a webinar. And a lot of you may already know this, but we'll just go through a few of those differences. And so in a gallery view in a meeting, you could have still the same thing. You have, one person do it, and then the next person, and then the next person. And then I usually say I'll do it first and last. So then I have to remember everybody's name, and hopefully the kids, help me with that as we go along. So that's kind of how we do the name game. And if you have any suggestions or anything that you play that you think would be good and the group would like it, feel free to put that in the chat. And one of the things, when you're in the chat, I think there's an option of whether the panelists can see it or everyone can see it. And so put it on everyone if it's something that you think could help the whole entire group. Meetings versus webinars. So right now we're in a webinar, and the reason I did the webinar is because I want to record this, and I am recording it, and I didn't want to have to deal with releases of everyone. And so that way we can have this as a tool that people can use, and you can go back and refer to, because I'm going to do 12 activities at the end, and then you can use that as reference for your camps or your programs. So meetings versus webinars. Right now, like I said, we're in a webinar. It's mostly you teaching and talking. You can do chats, you can do polls, but a lot of the other features aren't on for the participants of the webinar. Meetings are, the participants can be seen and heard, and you can decide whether they can do video or not video. And that's what I was talking about as far as like the gallery view of meeting is it shows everybody in there. And so we're going to play a couple games or talk about a couple activities you can do with them later and see how that might work. And then annotate. Annotate is a really fun thing that is available for the participants when you do a Zoom meeting, and it allows them to write on your slide. So you can write on the slide, you can type on the slide, you can do text or writing, and then stamping is another thing, like you can put a stamp on there. And so those are kind of fun things that you can use. The other thing is with a meeting, you can do breakout rooms, and you can assign them, it's probably best to assign them ahead of time, but then you have breakout rooms where they can do discussions and then come back, or do an activity and then come back to the group. Equipment and internet connection. So I have an external mic. It's a Snowball Blue mic. I'll show you. This is what it looks like. And it's a USB. You can also have a pop screen. I do have a pop screen. So if my P's or T's are too loud, then you can put a screen in front of it. You can get that on Amazon. There's also several other kind of USB mics that you can use. But if you don't have an external mic, a lot of times the room will echo a lot, and then it's harder to hear. So one of the things is if you have issues with Wi-Fi, so let's say you're doing this from home and you have kids and they're on the internet, and so everybody's pulling for that bandwidth at the same time. One of the things you can do is you can usually plug directly into a router with an Ethernet cable, and most newer computers don't have an Ethernet connection in their in the computer or the laptop, so you usually have to have an adapter. So they have adapters that go from Ethernet to USB and things like that that you can use. But that's an option you can do if you have slow Wi-Fi or you have multiple people that are going on your Wi-Fi. And then a webcam. Most laptops have webcams. I think all laptops have webcams built into them now. So I'm actually using an external webcam. And the reason is because the laptop that I have is, it's an XPS, a Dell XPS. And the model that they did, they put the camera in the lower corner of the monitor. So it really does not look very good. And it's really hard to look at the camera when it's in the lower corner of your computer. So I have an external one, and that's kind of like at eye height. And that's kind of what they tell you to do, is kind of put it at eye level for your webcam. So one of the things that I'm doing today is I'm using a program called OBS Studio. And what OBS Studio allows you to do is it allows you to be right in with your slides. So you can see my picture and you can see my slide. So most of the time when you're in presenter view, you'll see the whole, like if they're doing a slide share, you'll see the slide, and then you'll see a little picture of the presenter. So I learned this trick from an organization called teachingentrepreneurshiп.org. And they do mainly college level, community college and four-year universities, but they have, they actually have a free online training right now that they're doing. And one of the videos that they posted was how to use this OBS Studio and actually put your picture into the slides. And what it does is it uses OBS Studio as a virtual camera. So it's like a program. It's actually free. It's open source. And you set up your PowerPoint slides with a section of it that looks like a green screen. And so then your picture goes right in there, and then you're right in the slides. So that's kind of a cool thing to do. And it doesn't take that long. I did it yesterday afternoon, got it all set up and figured it out. It's a little putsy, but I kind of like how it looks and when you're presenting. So I actually have a link to the OBS Studio video of how to set that up in the additional resources that I'm going to give you, along with all the equipment that I'm using, and some other video resources that I've found that I think are extremely helpful, that I think would be helpful for you too. So lighting and background. So there's outdoor lighting versus indoor lighting. If you can be by a window that has some like filtered, not direct sunlight, but filtered natural light, that's a really good way to do your lighting. And then indoor lighting, fluorescents aren't really that great, right? That's what's shining on me right now. And so you could use whatever light is in your room, or you could get a lighting kit. So I do have a cowboy lighting kit. It's called Cowboy Lighting. It's like $60-some on Amazon, and I will have the link to that in the additional resources. What is nice about that, and I use that for when I do my YouTube videos, and I do my YouTube videos on an iPhone 11, and then I have that lighting in there with the cowboy lighting, and that really does help. So it diffuses the light so it's not really bright, and really helps with that. One of the other thing is so when I first was going to do this webinar, the one thing I wanted to do was really do it like with the computer screen in the back, like teaching a class, because that's how I do my YouTube videos, and I really like that. But the lighting was really bad. So the video monitor, the monitor that was up on the TV was really bright, and then I looked really dark. So it didn't really work very well with the lighting. And I could have brought in more light kits and stuff. I'm in the classroom that I teach in now. And so then that just didn't work. So we decided, we're going to do the share screen. And then I decided, I don't really like that. So I went and figured out this OBS studio. But one of the things is if you have a computer screen or a TV screen and you're doing teaching and you see reflections, or eyeglasses are a big thing like that too, then you can't always, you have reflections, and so you got to watch out for that. So sometimes, like if there's light in your room, you can just put white paper over it, kind of diffuse it, and think about how that reflects, or maybe you need to move things or stuff like that, because that can be distracting. Live backgrounds versus virtual backgrounds. So Zoom has all these virtual backgrounds now, right? And they're cool, right? They have all these Disney ones because they got the Disney licensing. And so I've seen all these different Disney ones when I go on webinars with people. Here's one thing you got to watch out for. If they're a busy virtual background and the people are moving their hands or they're moving their head or whatever, it's very distracting because it's like this weird effect you get when they move. It kind of goes, and so it's out of focus, and it kind of like can kind of drive you crazy, right? But it's kind of funny. So one trick that I learned is Mike Domish, who's a colleague of mine, he's a speaker. He did this really great Zoom video meeting, and it's on YouTube, and I put the link in the additional resources. And he said, if you get a green screen and put it behind you, and then you have the virtual backgrounds, it sort of takes that away, which is really an interesting thing. But somehow that helps the virtual backgrounds. You also can create your own Zoom background with your logo and all of that kind of stuff. And Canva, which is a program, a graphic design program that I use a lot, you can design your own Zoom backgrounds now. They have templates and everything. Co-host. So co-host, you might have a co-host help you with different things during your webinar. You might have a co-presenter, right? So they might be a co-presenter, and when you share your screen, you'll see their screen and your screen. So that is one way to do it. What else they can help with is chats and Q&A. So if you have a really large group, or you're on for a really long time or whatever, and you need help with the chat room or Q&A, then they can help you with that. Another thing is participant management. So if you have kids in there and they're not really paying attention, or in the classroom, it's really easy to just kind of walk over to them and kind of see what they're doing, right? Or you can just be silent for a few minutes, and then they all kind of go shh, and then get back together. But in virtual, it's harder to do that because they're in their own home, or they're in their own space, and you're not with them. So a co-host could sort of like pay attention, like if he sees the videos or she sees the videos and sees them off doing something else or texting on their phone or whatever, then they can do a private chat to them and talk to them. Meeting management is another thing. So I'm sure you've heard that recently there's people that are like photobombing webinars and meetings and stuff, and they're coming in and they're just kind of taking over, right? And so when you're doing it for the kids, I would recommend that you do a password for them, or set it up so that you have to let them in. And if you don't have a huge group, that's pretty easy to do, right? So you can let them in, or you could have a co-host do that for you. So that's another thing that a co-host can do. Polling. So polling is one way that you can review with the kids. You can see if they're doing, if they're on board with what you're teaching. It helps to keep them engaged because they have to come in and do something with you. And so that's really effective in that. One thing is, I would say that you should set those up ahead of time. So, come up with what do you want to quiz them about, or what key points do you want them to know, so that you have that set up ahead of time. And then that way, when you're doing it, all you have to do is launch the poll. So Kahoot is a program that I've used in the classroom for kids, because they really like that program. It's a polling program, but then it gives them points, right? So it's kind of like a competition, and kids seem to think it's really fun. It's more like gamified. So the pro is that it's fun, and that it's more gamified than just a regular poll. But the con is they either have to have that browser window open on their computer, and then they have to switch back and forth, or they have to have a mobile device. So it really depends on your audience, the age of the kids that you're teaching, and whether you really want to have them have cell phones there to be distracted. So that's kind of, some options. There's many other polling options. There's like Poll Everywhere, and there's several other ones that you can use. And that anytime that you are doing a poll, you just scroll down to the bottom of your screen, and then all of your choices will be there. Okay. Okay, teaching and interactivity. So one of the things is, when you're teaching in a virtual environment, you have to be so much more organized than when you're teaching in a classroom, because what happens in a classroom, right? You have supplies all the way around your classroom. You have paper, markers, pencils, anything they might need, extra handouts, game supplies, all of that kind of stuff. So in a virtual environment, they have to have all of that ahead of time. They have to have it organized. They have to have it so that they can be successful in your virtual program. So what we do in ours is we actually give them, they get a briefcase, a Padfolio, a workbook, they have a water bottle, they have a t-shirt. All of that goes in the briefcase. So now we're going to add additional things. So anytime we had an extra handout, that has to go in there. Anytime we have, like, they need supplies such as markers, pencils, pens, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to put that all together and have that in their briefcase, so that when they pick up their camp supplies, also poster board. So we'll give them some poster board also. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to label it like day one. This is what you need. And either have Post-its or put them in a Ziploc or label them, so that they're very organized. So it's really important that they're organized, the materials are organized, and that you have everything together for them. Oops. And then teaching for short periods of time, right? Because kids, they don't have a long attention span. Adults don't have a long attention span. So you want to make sure you keep it short and put intermittent activities. And that's why we're going to go through like 12 different activities that you can use. And I'm sending you in the additional resources, there's actually 3 one-hour videos that have so many activities that you could use. So you can check those out and use those also. And then Q&A, make sure they know what you're doing, maybe, that they understand what they need to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually put breaks and offline work into the schedule, so that they can go do work on their own. And so that way they can do work at home. They might have a bathroom break, a snack break, a lunch break, and then they'll have assignments that they need to do. And then when they come back, share progress, so we know that they make sure they stay on schedule, and Q&A, and then kind of repeat. So that's kind of the method that we're going to use this summer for it. I see a question in the chat box from Doreen. The name of the entrepreneurship education was teachingentrpreneurship.org, and there will be a link to it in the additional resources. So name game. We already did the name game, right? So that's activity idea 1. We always do that as the first thing in our camp, just so everybody can learn each other's names. Activity idea 2 is networking bingo. So one of the things we do is we talk about networking, right? And what is the importance of networking? And so we usually do the business handshake. Can't do the business handshake right now. So we have to figure out what else, how else are we going to do that? We do the peace sign, the shaka, all those kind of things. So, but networking is important, and it's important to have connections when you're in business. So we're trying to find out the connections between the kids. This is a bingo card that we usually have the kids walk around and do, but we're going to do it online with putting it up on a slide so the kids can all see it. And then what I'll do is I'll start it off by asking one of the squares, and then the kids can raise their hand and I can choose one, and then they can answer. And then whoever answers that and says they have that particular thing, then they'll ask another square on the board, and then go to the next, ask another kid. So then that way it goes all the way around. And I usually say, make sure you ask somebody that hasn't been asked before so that everybody's involved. But that's a good way to like build connection. We usually do it at either the beginning of a day, or you might do it right after lunch on the first day, just to help build connections with the kids. Activity idea 3. Okay, so this is a really short activity, and I learned this from Michelle Cummings of Training Wheel, and her links are in the additional resource document that I'm going to be emailing you along with the recording of the webinar. And she has 3 1-hour virtual team building activities. She usually works with corporate people, but a lot of these things you can do with kids too. So the 6 count is a really fun way to get kids sort of moving. And so I would probably do this standing up, and I would probably take this screen away and actually do a full screen. And then it also gets their like neurotransmitters connecting a little bit. And then it's a good one to do either after lunch or maybe like 3 o'clock in the afternoon when there's kind of like that slug time, or 2 o'clock, whatever. So that the kids can kind of get up. But the way you do it is you start and you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you count to 6, and then you say the kids count to 6, and then they count to 6. And then you have them do their right arm. And now I should probably do this opposite, and I was trying to do it opposite last night. I'm not good at it opposite, so we're going to go with the right arm. So the right arm goes up, down, up, down, up, down. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so then you have the kids do that. So then they do that. Then the left arm goes up, out, down, up, out, down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now you got to put them together. So you go up, out, down, up, out, down. And you should practice so that you can be better than the kids. I'm better at it when I don't have to be teaching it. But when you're teaching it, you're like trying to think of all these things. But it's a really good one to get them kind of thinking. It's kind of like, where you're patting your stomach and rubbing your head and those kind of coordination things. It really gets them going. And you can't just do it, right? You have to really think about it. So I like to do it at the beginning and then like maybe the 3rd day, because it's really interesting. The kids that practice it, right? They're competitive. They want to be good at it. They want to be better than the teacher. So then they're going to be practicing, and of course they're going to be better than the teacher someday. But so that's really interesting and fun activity to do. Okay, would you rather is just a simple connection thing, although you can build in business questions too. So all it is sort of a polling, and then you can see them. So what you're going to do is you're going to explain it, and you're going to say, would you rather will have 2 questions. You have to choose one or the other, and the first one will be choice 1, and the second one will be choice 2. So they're either going to hold up 1 finger or 2 fingers. And so you might say, would you rather watch Netflix or play video games? So Netflix would be 1, video games would be 2. So I would put up a 1, or some kids are going to put up a 2. And then, or you might say like a fun business question, easy one would be, would you rather work for someone else or would you rather start your business? And then they put up their choice, either one or two. You could do that with a number of different things. It's just a way for them to do like another polling thing with more movement and more engagement in it. Activity idea 5 is just putting up, you can put up pictures. If you have a subscription to some stock photo, or I use deposit photos, it's pretty inexpensive. And you can put the photos up on the slide, and then you could do a number of different activities. So one of them could be, you could use annotate or stamp. You could have them stamp a picture or annotate what their thoughts are about it, or why they're identifying with it. You could also say, this is how I feel today, and have them identify with a picture and then maybe explain why. The other thing is you could have them in breakout rooms. So you could put them in 6 breakout rooms, and each breakout room has a picture, and then they make up a little story about it, like, what is that boy thinking in the when he's doing the piggy bank? And then that way they can come back and they can say, oh, here's the story that we got from this picture. And that's just a kind of a creativity thing to do with the kids. Activity number 6. So here's what I was thinking with these words and coming up with them is, why are you here? So everybody has a different reason for coming to classes, right? Adults do, kids do. Sometimes their parents make them come to this business camp and they're like, I didn't really want to come. And I didn't put that in here, but you could add that too. My parents made me or something. But then they need to choose what their reason is for coming here. Like a lot of kids, they do want to make a difference. They really are, want to do some social enterprise thing, or they know a problem they want to solve, or they want to help somebody else. Or then there's the kids who come because they want to earn money, right? They think that being an entrepreneur is going to make them rich, which that possibility is there, but it is a lot of hard work, right? So it's really interesting to do this. This could be done like on the first day, maybe mid-morning or something, and just as a kind of like, background, why are they here, that kind of thing. Activity number 7 is, what is the brand? So this is a really good one to do when you're going to teach the branding lesson. You could display a number of logos or play sounds or jingles that the kids might be familiar with, have them guess what brand it is. This is something you actually could do on Kahoot, and it would be pretty fun because it would be a fun competition kind of thing. It also, you could tie it into the branding as far as like there's secret meanings behind a lot of these brands. Amazon, for instance, has the A to Z. Amazon is the longest river in the world. All of those kind of things. So tie those into brands. Also the colors of the brands, emote or give out, have people think of certain emotions. And so it kind of like would help them when they come up with their brand and their logos and stuff. And the reason I don't have them on here is I didn't want to put the logos on due to copyright law. Activity 8. So this is a really fun, short lesson, and called Actions Are Stronger Than Words. So what you do is you have them make an okay sign, and okay doesn't always mean the same thing in every country, right? So you might use a different sign, you might use a peace sign or whatever. And then what you're going to do is you're going to say, make an okay sign, have the kids make an okay sign, and put it on your chin. And what do you think they're going to do? They're going to put it on their cheek because they saw you put it on your cheek, right? And then you go, oh, I see you all putting it on your chin, and you move it down there, and then they all laugh because they think it's funny. But then you just make the point that actions are stronger than words, right? And how many times do we identify with what we see instead of what we hear? And then tie that into like how important it is to really listen to your customer, to really listen to your prospects so that you know what they want and how you can help them. Activity number 9. So I have a beach ball here. And so these beach balls are really fun. You can get them on Amazon. I have a link in the additional resources. And in the classroom, you know, we throw them at each other, right? But you can't do that in virtual. And so the way to do it in the virtual environment is you're going to throw them a virtual beach ball. Now, they also have thumb balls. They are smaller than this, and they actually might work better for a virtual environment. But for a live environment, I like the beach balls much better because the kids tend to whip them at each other, even though you tell them not to. And that way, no one gets hurt with the beach ball. So what I do is I would say, okay, Andy, I'm going to throw this virtual beach ball, and you just throw it so it's outside of the camera. And then I have it, my thumb on one, and I read them the question. If you could land on any planet, which would you choose? And then Andy answers that. And then I say, Andy, pick another, you know, throw the ball to another person. So then he does the movement, and then I ask the next question. So that's kind of a fun activity that you could do, and you can do that virtually with the kids. Activity number 10 is called the Ultimate Entrepreneur. So we have a worksheet that we do, and we don't do this right away because they have to learn more about what an entrepreneur is. We have several guest speakers that kind of tell them about you know, their businesses and their story, and you kind of get what their characteristics are throughout the week from those entrepreneurs. And so then this worksheet is kind of just a drawing with all kinds of crazy things on it. And so you see they have like a little beanie with the cap on it. There's light bulbs for ideas, all that. And we have them go through and just label different things on there. And so virtually what you could do is you could have this up on the screen, and then you can have them annotate, right? They could go in and they could write little comments about it, like this is their characteristic or whatever. And then that would be kind of fun to make, and then have them print it out, and then have that as sort of a memento that they keep from the camp. The other thing you could do is what we do in the live camp is we actually give them a life-size sort of piece of butcher paper, and they draw that, and then they label it, and it's sort of in small teams. So it's a really fun activity. It's amazing what they come up with, and then we make them present it to the class, and so it's pretty fun, crazy thing. You could still have them do that. They would just have to do it on their own instead of with a team, unless you did it in a breakout room and one kid had it and everybody was inputting. The other thing that I'm going to do this year is I'm actually going to use it twice. So I'm going to use it. We have 2 different camps. One is a startup camp, and one is a business and leadership camp. And the startup camp are you know, new kids and learning the characteristics. The business and leadership are ones that already have their business going. And we're going to talk a lot about the mindset. So the growth mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset. And then what I'm going to do in the second one is they're going to do it based on the mindset instead of characteristics. So then we have that. Activity 11 is where in the world is. So when you're in a meeting and you're in gallery view, everybody's in a different order. And you don't usually realize that when you're on a meeting. I mean, you can kind of think about it. Oh yeah, that makes sense. But you don't really think about it, you know, when you're in the meeting. You just see everybody on your screen. So I might see Julie, Kyle, Amanda, and Bill might see Kyle, Amanda, Julie, in all different orders. So what you do is, as the facilitator, you would say, where in the world is Amanda? And then some people would go up, side, down, you know, all different ways. And then all of a sudden everybody goes, oh, wow, that's weird, because everybody's in a different order. And you don't really think about that. But you could tie that in to, well, everyone knows the game, right? Where in the world is Carmen San Diego? So you sort of set it up that way. And I have that in the instructions. But then after you do that, you kind of say, well, just think about that. Everybody in the world sees things differently, right? So then you can start building that in a little bit into the entrepreneur mindset or leadership mindset, about how all the different world thinks differently and sees things differently. And so that can tie into a lesson like that. The last one I have for you is advice from A. So this one also was from Michelle Cummings of Training Wheels. She likes advice from a trout because she's a fly fisherman, which I thought was really interesting. So one of the things you could do is have kids Google advice from A, and there's like hundreds of them. There's trees, sunflower, fish, rock, there's all different ones. It's pretty funny. So you could have the kids kind of pick one and kind of say why they identify with it. And then you could actually have them create advice from an entrepreneur. So you probably do this on your last day and have each kid come up with one thing. Like you could have a big sheet up there and then they annotate on it. And that would be another thing that they could have as like a memento from camp, is that they come up with an advice from an entrepreneur. So in the chat box, I'd love to hear at least one thing. Uh-oh, I'm going to have to move my PowerPoint screen. This is not going to be good. My able-bodied assistant will have to come over and help me. But if you could put one thing that you're going to try, that would be awesome, so that I know that at least you got one thing out of here. Oh, I see some chatting, so that's good. Would you rather? Oh, good. Ultimate entrepreneur. I like that. Good. Thank you for sharing. So if there's any other question, where in the world sounds like fun game reminds me of Brady Bunch? Yeah, actually, that's a good one. The Brady Bunch, kind of when you are set up like that, you look like the Brady Bunch, right? Especially if you had 9 kids, you'd look like the Brady Bunch. So that's pretty funny. And I think there is actually a game about that. I saw it somewhere in a video that I watched, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cute. These kids didn't grow up with the Brady Bunch, but they probably know who they are. Okay. So additional resources, I'm going to email everyone who signed up for the webinar. So I will send an additional resource sheet out with all of the links that I promised, and also a detailed explanation of each of the activities and a recording of the video. So thanks so much for attending, and I wish everyone a safe summer, empowering you through entrepreneurship, because we all know how important that is, right? And especially in with the economy the way it is. And one thing that I've been seeing is a lot about how the boomers are retiring, and that we aren't really bringing kids up to teach them about entrepreneurship and business. So our economies might even struggle more about that. So if you have any questions about our youth entrepreneurship curriculum, you can visit our website at eSeedling, or you can email me at juliewood@eseedling.com. So thanks again for joining into the webinar, and I hope it was helpful for you. Have a good weekend, everyone.